Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. Today, we're going way back to the Neolithic period. You know, a time that we often think of as pretty basic, right? But as we're going to find out today, maybe not so much, we're taking a deep dive into a recent journal article about a very strange find. A stone-paved cellar, thousands of years old.
You got it. Not your typical everyday discovery.
No kidding.
This cellar found in Denmark really flips the script on what we thought we knew about the Neolithic.
Yeah, a stone-paved cellar from that time. That's unheard of in Denmark. It's like unearthing a Roman mosaic in your backyard. Like, doesn't compute.
Totally. This all went down during a pretty standard excavation. They were prepping for a railway expansion near this village, Eskilstrup.
Oh, yeah?
So picture this. They're digging away, expecting the usual bits and bobs, remnants of houses, maybe some old fences, and bam, they hit this amazingly preserved cellar.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time, huh? So they're digging for a train route and strike archaeological gold. What's the deal with this cellar? Paint us a picture. What'd they find down there?
Well, the cellar itself, it's like prehistoric engineering genius. It's this meticulously built space, about 2 meters by 1.5 meters, and it sits about 50 centimeters lower than the surrounding ground level.
Serious construction.
Oh yeah, and get this. The walls, they're built with these larger stones at the bottom and then filled in with smaller pebbles. Like they really thought about how to make it last even cooler. One side actually slopes upwards, which could have been how they got in and out.
Wow. No expense spared. It sounds like they took a lot of care putting this cellar together, which begs a question. What was it for? What were they keeping down there back in the Stone Age? Grain, tools, maybe some ancient tax documents?
I wish. Haven't found any of those yet. But unfortunately, the cellar itself was pretty much empty in terms of artifacts. There were a few pieces of pottery, some burnt bone fragments, but nothing that definitively tells us what it was used for.
So how do we even begin to understand this thing? Why go through all that work for this structure?
Well, that's where the real archaeology magic comes in. We got to look at every little clue, even if it doesn't seem like much, and piece it together with everything else we know about the Neolithic. And since these were farming communities, it makes sense that they might have used the cellar for storage, keeping food and other important stuff safe, dry, and, away from hungry animals, I'd imagine.
Their Neolithic refrigerator?
Exactly.
Makes total sense. I mean, keeping food safe back then would have been huge.
Right. And the fact that they went all out with the construction using stone instead of just digging a hole tells us that whatever they were storing, it was valuable to them. Important.
Well, okay, so we've got this high security Neolithic pantry built to withstand anything. What else can you tell us about the folks who lived here? Anything else at the site that might give us some clues?
Definitely. Remember how we were talking about the excavation? This wasn't just about the cellar. They found evidence of houses, too.
Oh, yeah, right.
And get this, 2 phases of construction built right on top of each other. That tells us people weren't just passing through. They lived there for a good long while.
Prime real estate. Sounds like they knew a good spot when they found one. But what about those fences mentioned in the article? How do those fit in?
Ah, the fences. Now, those are interesting. We're not talking about some flimsy little barriers here. These were sturdy. The archaeologists found rows of big old posts, evidence of something much more substantial. It's like they had a whole system of enclosures, marking territory, maybe controlling access to different areas.
So not just keeping the neighbors out, maybe dividing up the settlement itself? Different areas for different things?
Could be. Now, were these fences built around the same time as the cellar? Here's where it gets really cool. Radiocarbon dating suggests they might actually be older.
Older.
Yeah. Maybe even as far back as like 3600 to 3500 BC.
Wow. Talk about layers of history, every generation leaving its mark. What does that tell us about, I don't know, how society might have been changing back then?
Great question. Those big fences, especially that early on, they suggest this need for protecting, what's your resources, land, territorialism. Remember where this site is. Near a valley and a bog, prime resource areas, as more people are around, and those resources become more valuable. Marking your territory, it's crucial.
Man, some things never change, right? Land ownership, resource management, keeping up with the Joneses. It's like looking in a mirror, but, with stone tools. But hold on, back to the dating of all this. How can we be sure about the dates? We're talking thousands of years ago.
You're right, dating isn't simple. But archaeologists have gotten really good at it. Radiocarbon dating is like their secret weapon.
Right, they're analyzing that carbon-14, seeing how much is left in organic stuff to figure out how old it is. It's like a prehistoric time capsule, only instead of cool artifacts, we're talking about, decaying atoms.
Precisely. And in this case, The results were really eye-opening. The cellar itself dates to around 3000 BC, smack dab in the Middle Neolithic. But those fences, even older, like I said, 3600 to 3500 BC. So we're not just talking about a settlement that stayed the same for centuries. This two-phased occupation tells us this community was adapting, changing over a long period.
It really changes how we think about the Neolithic, doesn't it? It's not just this, like, unchanging era we often imagine. We're seeing innovation, adaptation, people thinking long term, and that cellar is, like, right in the middle of it all. This is blowing my mind. We started with a cellar, and now it's like we're seeing this whole story unfold. Innovation, adaptation, change over hundreds of years makes you think twice about those Neolithic folks, right?
Right. They weren't just surviving. The cellar, the fences, people living there for generations, that's a level of planning and, I don't know, sophistication that you just don't expect from the Stone Age.
It's like we stumbled on a turning point. And it wasn't some big invention. It's about figuring out how to store food. It's about people working together.
Exactly. Think about what it took to build those fences. To dig that cellar, reinforce it, that's a whole community, right? Working towards the same goal.
Yeah.
They had to have some kind of leadership, some way of making decisions.
And storing all that food, it wasn't just about not starving. It's got to be bigger than that.
Oh, yeah. A reliable food supply, that leads to more people.
Yeah.
It means they can start specializing. Some farm, some build, some trade. It all builds on itself.
So this cellar, it's like a time capsule, a snapshot of this huge moment in human history.
It really is. And it reminds us that we're not so different. They had challenges. We have challenges. They found solutions. We find solutions. It's all connected.
It's humbling. We think we're so advanced, but this shows us that our ancestors were incredibly resourceful,
Yep.
smart.
Absolutely. They were dealing with a lot of the same things we are, just with different tools.
Right. It makes you think, what else is out there? What other discoveries are waiting to be made that'll turn everything we thought we knew upside down?
That's the beauty of it, right? There's always something new to uncover, to challenge our assumptions about the past.
Exactly. And on that note, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for coming along as we journeyed back to the Neolithic and got a glimpse of how sophisticated our ancestors really were. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep digging deeper into the past, because you never know what you might find.